Hey, I'm James, also known as Slim Jim. This is the second instalment of my sporadic video series detailing different features of my long-term project campervan, Bongo Fury. Last time I talked a little about the Project Zoo body kit, but mostly how I converted the awful Project Zoo lights to modern day power LEDs. Click up here if you're interested in seeing that, if you missed it. I'm trying to be a bit methodical, so we are moving away from the front of the van to the back. So that means the next on the list is the engine bay. So today I'm going to talk about the drivetrain. The numerous engines, gearboxes I've gone through, as well as why I'd be stupid enough to drag race a camper. A little caveat is that I never planned to make the videos about the van. I mostly use photos to capture the work rather than videos, so I'm going to try and make sure it's not a boring slideshow, but you're just going to get what I've got. I get a feeling this video might be quite long, so I'm going to go over all the historical and incremental changes on the engine, and then do a detailed breakdown on my current setup. This year was the 10-year anniversary of us buying the van, so if you don't want to hear all the trials and tribulations on the builds I've done in the last decade, including exploding turbos and bent con rods and valve lift, all sorts of stuff, then jump down here to this time, and then you can hear about what I'm running now. When I first had the van in January 2012, it already had larger injectors installed, but it hadn't been remapped to use them, so it was just smoking. It was probably about stock power, 102 brake, the AXG. I thought I knew what I was doing when I inspected it before buying, but I obviously didn't, because there were all sorts of issues I missed. It had been run way too low. In fact, it was too low when I bought it. It was on huge 20-inch wheels, mad. But the steering rack was knackered because it was so low. It needed a water pump changed. It hadn't been serviced. It was kind of a bit of a mess and needed sorting out. I took it to a place to have that sorted, and I got a nice £2,000 bill, which was a sign of things to come. Once it was back up to scratch, we took it to a guy in Rochdale to have the rolling road mapping done so we could take advantage of the bigger injectors. This was so soon after buying it, you can see on the images that the previous owner's private plate was still on. It was only supposed to take a couple of hours to do, but apparently the ECU wasn't playing ball. They had to take it apart, solder some parts on, and it took 8 hours to do the map. Long day. The remap was good though, because it brought the power up to 150 brake horsepower at the fly, which is 50% more than stock, and the extra power felt great, and the van became much more enjoyable to drive. Soon after this, we attended BugJam to get into the spirit of VW ownership. That was in August 2012. It was my wife's first visit, but I'd been before quite a lot. A little bit of history there. When I was younger, I would often be a tow car driver for my uncle Gary Angel, who was a former VW DRC champion. He ran Bugbear, 1968 Beetle doing 11 second quarter miles, and then Bugbear 2 after that, which is a rail that held the European record for the fastest 4-cylinder normally aspirated engine, doing 9-second passes, which was crazy at the time. I even ran the Volvo down the strip a few times just for a laugh. Anyway, sat in the stands, watching racing again at Santa Pod made me reminisce about that, and plans hatched in my head that I would run the van down the strip. In 2013, I took the van to my local VW specialist to try and squeeze a little bit more power out of it, and we did a pretty major refresh bordering on rebuild, adding lots and lots of AXG bits. The AXG was only released in mainland Europe, higher brake horsepower it got, lots of extra bits on it. We took the intake box, a load of pipe work and intake manifold and put it on the engine. We also upgraded to a VNT20, from an Audi A6, put in bigger injectors, rebuilt the fuel pump, put a larger oil cooler, and while the engine was out, we stripped it all down, cleaned it and painted it. It had been seeping for a while, so it needed a good going over. We also retrofitted air conditioning, so my centre vents would blow hot. If you know, you know. Another thing we did was we swapped the stock TM IC to a charge cooler, so instead of an intercooler air to air, it's water to air. Thinking this would give us a better advantage over the OEM one. That had come back to bite me twice, maybe 3 times, wait for that. A few other bits like a better clutch, and we popped the back of the bonnet for a bit more heat to escape, like a bit of a homage to the step-off boot lids on hot rod Beetles with the Porsche engines in. I lost count of the amount of people telling me my bonnet was open when I ran that. Crazy. Nice people. Just revving it in the workshop, the turbo whistled massively through the intake, showing something was restricted, but didn't realise it at the time. Have a listen. It sounded cool, but again, it was going to be an issue later on. To use all these upgrades, a rolling road was needed, so in July we went over to a mapping place in Warwickshire and they managed to squeeze out 199 brake and 341 foot-pounds at the wheels. Just shy of 200, but there you go. And this was all just in time for VW Action in August 2013, which is at Santa Pod, and there was a Run What You Brung day. So I had a fantastic day driving up and down the strip. Not great speeds, but okay. The best managed was a 17.46 at 79 miles an hour. It was slow, but I had so much fun. One thing that did happen on the start line was when I was in boost, sat there waiting to go, the engine cut out. I tried it a few times and it did it a few times, had to be rolled back, a bit embarrassing, but I eventually got to go. We looked into it and it turned out that the valves were floating due to high boost and weak spring valves. So we ordered some Roston Stifford valve springs for the next time the engine was apart. I didn't have to wait too long for that. The next big thing that happened was in 2014 when the engine was making a few funny noises. It wasn't starting well. I had to jump start it a few times. The battery didn't seem like it had got enough power if I left it for a few days. I took it to the local VW specialists and waited for the bad news, but it turned out the battery wasn't the issue. The charge cooler that we'd put in instead of top mount intercooler was above the engine and it was leaking. It had flooded the pistons and the engine had hydrolocked. So when I tried to bump start it, it hadn't liked it. I'd broken multiple main bearing bolts and main bearing caps. Annoying. And that had bent rods and pretty much killed the block. So we replaced the block with a Volvo V70 block, which is the same engine from the AXG, but Volvo had it strengthened by VW. ARP bolts everywhere, new uprated clutch, and a huge oversized top mount intercooler, because the last guy who'd mapped it said that the charge cooler had been a big restriction. Again, this is going to come back to bite me, because the tuners had asked the turbo for everything as soon as it could because the charge cooler had been so restrictive. So the first time the mechanic took the van up the road to see how it drove, the turbo got all the air in because there was no restriction and it ripped the turbo in half. It just couldn't handle the amount of flow. We switched to a GT 2052V turbo to see if that could take it, not knowing the tune was the issue. And again, we went out for a spirited drive and that turbo also exploded. It took a long time for me to save for parts, so we rolled into 2015. While sourcing another GT 2052V turbo, I also managed to get hold of an AXG Gearbox, because when VW made the 151 PS version, they overbuilt everything on it, including the clutch being 20mm bigger. It turned out the drive shafts and intermediate shafts are also bigger, so I had to source those, which was much harder than you think. Overnight parts from Sweden! While we're at it, we also put in 0.75 injectors and moved up to a 12mm fuel pump. We had the Warwickshire-based tuner send me a toned-down tune to add to the van to get it to run better, and it ran really well. I'm going to guess the power was about the same, if not slightly more with the bigger turbos and injectors, but it didn't go on the rolling road, so let's say around 200 again. In September 2015, I attended another Run What You Brung date, along with a few others, as by now the 2017 club was getting quite a few followers on Facebook and on the website, and that was the first time I managed a sub 17 second pass. but only just. 16.7064 at 85.86 miles an hour. In April 2016, I organised a tuning day for the T17 Club members at Dirty Talk, which is a rolling road diesel mappers near me. Quite a few people turned up, and while we were there, the guys tuned my van a little bit, and that's when we reached the magic number of 222 brake and 390 foot-pounds of torque, which was rather nice. I was ready to go down the strip again to try for a better time, but that didn't happen for another 3 years. I was driving it and enjoying it and didn't want to kill the man down the strip. GTI Fest at Santa Pod in 2019. Again, a few vans attended and had another superb day driving, but also talking to everyone about their vans and seeing them run. I did manage to get a better time, but it was so annoying. 16.0090 at 89.8 miles an hour. So annoying. Just tantalisingly close to a 15-second run. Even more annoying is that I'd run a 16.3 at 90.81, but I'd had an awful 60 foot, and that kind of dictates your speed at the top end. At the end of 2019, beginning of 2020 was where we had a few issues. The van had gone for paint, but it had also gone to have a service, including a balancer pulley replacement. And somewhere along the line, the pulley wasn't tightened down properly, and the whole thing span, which basically ate the engine. I parted ways with the mechanic who was working on the van up till then and moved on to where I use now, which is Central England Automotive, or CEA. Something else happened at the beginning of 2020. Oh yeah, COVID. Before this, I'd agreed with CEA we were going to do a full rebuild of the engine and just build it better. We're now in the video up to date where the van is now, so we'll welcome the impatient viewers who skipped from the beginning. I'm going to move through the engine from the intake to the exhaust and be as detailed as I can. Once the engine was out, the bay was stripped and prepped and painted to be a good base for what was to come. The intake filter is huge. The cone is 20 centimeters across to help with airflow. There's a velocity stack where it connects to the 63mm pipework linking it to the turbo. There's no MAF, that's been coded out. It's all been painted in crackle black paint to make it quite cool. There's a hacked hybrid GTB 2260VK turbo, which has been set up with VNT control from the AXG ECU that we added. We also added a Turbo Smart oil pressure regulator to make sure the pressure on the turbo is only up to 40 psi. Until now, I'd insisted on keeping the top mount intercooler to keep it stock, but it's just a crazy place to put it. So we swapped to a Mishimoto front mount, which we only needed a few minor modifications on the Project Zoo bumper to make it look stealthy yet mean, painted it black. We used a hole cutter for the intercooler piping to go through the driver's side, and we used the OEM fuel filter hole to return back to the AXG intake manifold. We made a few changes to the engine, put in 2.8 high flow injectors, crafted low compression oversized pistons and HB rods. The engine itself and the gearbox was color coded. The head, the engine mounts and the head cover being treated with crinkle black paint. All the ancillary bolts were taken off, cleaned up and sent for anodizing, which looks quite cool. And for any blow-by with a bigger turbo, we added a catch can, although it's running very dry, showing that the setup is built with fantastic tolerances. We upgraded the stock heat shielding around the back of the engine for high performance material. We also added a Funk Motorsport turbo blanket for the hot side. The red pipe you can see is the automatic fire suppression system, just in case there's a problem. For the extra fuel required, we added a lifter pump, as well as a fuel cooler that sits all underneath the van. And out of the AXG exhaust manifold, there's a 2.5-inch downpipe and 3-inch exhaust, all the way through to the back of the van, including like a V-band dropout section for a high flow catalytic converter that I run when I'm not going down the strip. Getting hold of all this hardware during the pandemic was a real challenge. Lead times were through the roof and some of the staff were ill or shielding during the time. So the van was finally finished from a hardware standpoint in June 2021. I spent the next few months building the insides back up because I'd gutted it originally to have the paint job that it had gone for in 2019. The van was then taken down to the legendary Singh from BSR for him to do his thing and see what kind of drivability he could return from the new setup. And I was honestly hoping for around about 250, but even getting back up to 220 reliably would have been great. On the old setup running 220, it always felt like the engine was right on the ragged edge and it just didn't feel right. You always felt like something was going to go wrong. Whereas the engine now feels solid and athletic and powerful. Bobby spent a full 3 days with the van, getting to know its quirks and features while he tuned it. Before the tune, on the new setup, all the power from the turbo came in at once at around $3.5 grand, which was fun because you seriously felt it when it hooked, but it didn't hook very often. Wheels span, and it was just unusable day to day. You've got to remember that even though I do take it down the strip every few years, its main job is not only a camper van for holidays, but it's also my daily driver, so it needed to be usable. After Bobby waved his magic wand, the power now comes on at just under 2 grand and keeps coming up until about 4. It's smoother, it's much nicer to drive, and the whole thing feels like effortless. And as a byproduct of this fantastic tuning, the Rolling Road gave some fantastic numbers. You can have a look at the numbers here. It's lovely to drive, it's smooth, relaxed power anytime you need it with no lag or hesitancy. There are some modifications Bobby's recommended that I could make to try and chase the numbers up higher, but the time, effort and money going in bring back diminishing returns. I just don't believe it's worth it at the moment. It has been run a couple of times with the Dragy unit, which is this cool little box that's quite accurate and gives you lots of information like 0 to 60 times and quarter mile times. The best I'd run it down fully prepped track was the heartbreaking 16:0090, annoyingly close to 15 seconds. But it struggles on an unprepared surface, either the clutch slips or the wheels spin, but I'm sure it'll be a lot better when I take it down to Santa Pod. The best it's done on the new build with the Dragy is 16.21. Borderline the same as the best it's done on a prepped surface, so when I manage to get it to the Santa Pod, I'm really hoping to get into the 15s. But I'm going to run it in and enjoy it for the next few months in case there are any issues on the track. It's a scary place, the drag racing track is. It will break anything that's weak and you find out any problems, but I want to enjoy it before it goes off the road again. I'm super happy with the way it drives. Huge thanks to all the guys that helped, so that everyone at CEA, Daz, Shelby, John, Keith at United Diesel, Bobby at BSR, but most importantly, my amazing wife who puts up with me during all this craziness. Well, that epic video covers off the engine and drivetrain. I hope you found it interesting. We're slowly moving front to back, so we've done the lights, we've done the engine and drivetrain and its history. Next, I guess we move into the cab with a possible mention of my superb stopping power from BG Engineering. They made it using an AP racing setup. It's superb, stops really well. But the cab is where I've done most of the work myself. Retrofitting a passenger airbag, painting the whole dash, custom switch setup, upgrading the clocks, Golf Plus roof console, lots of stuff. Look out for that video and possibly a question response video depending on how much questions I get for this video. I'm really sorry it's been such a long hiatus. I did say sporadic, but I had no idea it was going to be 8 months. It's just crazy. With coming off my bike and the operation to fix my thumb, it's not quite fixed, but it kind of works. I've also had a puppy, all sorts of things. The time's flown by. Hopefully it won't take me another 8 months to get the next one live, but if you do have any suggestions on what you would like to see next, queries, comments, suggestions, just please leave them in the comments below. Yeah, thanks for listening. See you next time. thought I knew. Right, okay, fuck this. Need a drink.